Hello and welcome to the Hedonistic Way at Midday Show. I am Renee Main, and this epic beauty, she is a storyteller, she is a visionary, she is a seer. She creates a moving, living canvas with this beautiful art that is absolutely cosmic. She geeks out on all of the coolest stuff. She's slightly left field, totally quirky, a little bit weird, and a whole lot of fun. Underneath all of that, she is on fire with her service, and she's stirring up socials in a really dynamic, captivating way, which just takes us away with her creativity and her brilliance. She is devoted to helping other people shine and becoming badass boss babes. Welcome to the show, Kia West.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. If I could just have you do like a little intro about me every single day, that would be I love it.
Right?
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
You're welcome. It's good to have you on the show, and I'm curious to see what unfolds. And the reason why I reached out to you to invite you onto the show was because I feel like just in the last, I don't know, like maybe I'll say like a month or 2 months, like I feel like something has just clicked. Something landed where you just went, this is who I am. And the power and the fire that I feel, and that I felt this shift. And I was really curious just to explore what that was like, because I know that, you know, you are a infinite creator, right? And the creatrix, you know, runs alive, you know, very much free flowing through you. But I feel like that creatrix has got like an undeniable path now.
Yeah, I agree. It's been in the last couple of months that I have really landed in that. And part of the unfurling of that was just recognizing that, you know, everything that I've learned up until this point, you know, trying to figure out how to be most impactful with my messaging, with the way that I create and share. And I had to do away with pretty much everything that anyone had ever told me and decide that I get to choose that. I get to create that, the way that I show up, the way that I share my message. And that has been incredibly liberating. And it's funny because it's always been in front of me, but it's like the last thing that I've like direct my attention to be able to find it. You know, even with creating video, I've been, you know, that's a huge part of my service now is creating video to amplify the message and you know, bring strategy into that and everything. But video has been a part of how I've shown up for such a long time, but I never really considered how I could really fly with that and how I could really shine with that. So yeah, it's been a process really to get into that acceptance of just being the true author, the true creator of my life, of my service, and all of the little parts that influence that. Yeah, since that landed, and since I landed in that, it's been like, phew, the fire has unleashed.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's funny. Like I was just writing a post yesterday about, you know, like, you know, underneath, like deep down, we're all the same. And then on the surface, we're still all the same, right? But that in between part, that space in between, really is where we get to explore and find ourselves and meet ourselves, and really it tapping into how we are different and finding that thread. So tell me, what was that process that you went through to go, like, because that's huge, to just be willing to detach yourself and surrender everything that you've learned, everything that everyone else has told you to be and how to show up. Letting that go is huge. So how did you do that?
Yeah. For me, it's really been a process of allowing my shadow to lead me. I think I had all of these ideas about myself, about what's good, what's bad. I kind of found myself in this space of duality where, this is good, this is bad. And that's kind of what drew me into that space in between. And there was this curiosity, I guess, that I followed about, what's so bad about this shadow. I had all of these preconceived ideas about what I had deemed as unworthy, as not good enough. And that really was what pulled me into that space. And I just started to follow her and dance with her and allow her to be the light that paved the way for me to be able to navigate it. And I recognized that all of these parts of myself, which, I think this is really a lifelong pattern of mine that I've been on a journey with, but it's always my shadow who brings me home. It's always the parts of me that I'm like, oh, I don't think I really want people to see that, or I don't really know if I want to really go there. And it's through that process of going there, like, okay, I am, accepting the differences, accepting the parts of me that, when I was sort of looking around what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, it's the parts of me that I was like hiding that ultimately ushered me into just fully expressing, fully actualizing all of it. And I think that's really where I get the most inspiration. It's where I get the most traction. It's where I get the most transformation in how and what I share, because it is fully encompassing and surrendering to the parts of us that we would normally want to not be seen. We don't want that. Yeah,
absolutely. That really landed for me, like in the last week as well. Like it's, like you and I have both done, multitude of shadow work, but in the last week, I really felt the reverence of the shadow, and having the same amount of reverence with the shadow as what we do with all of these other archetypes that we know and love and work with, but bringing the same amount of reverence into our shadow and using that to meet ourselves. What does that look like when right now, like, it feels like the separation and the duality is very much alive, So when you come out and you go, this is who I am, right? And you make that stance and you get, I'll say, feedback or traction, or you cause the ripples, right, of the charge that can activate then in others. How do you navigate when to stay true to who you are and be completely unwavering and not shrink when other people question that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In the last couple of months, I've really narrowed down as my North Star being in my truth. And that's a provocation to myself that I rely on to notice when I'm not in my truth. So, when we are stepping out in our truth, and sometimes that can be really provocative, and sometimes that can be going against the grain. And, with that brings a whole heap of shadow to meet with, to be able to stay there and stand in that. But I don't think that it's always fixed either. So, there's one thing to really stand in it, but there's also allowing it to pivot and change as your stance is always fluid.
Yeah.
And I think, especially when we're talking about taking a stance from and with the shadow, that in and of itself can transmute that shadow and transform it, and that can pivot the truth of what and who and what you are in that moment. So, I think it's always about coming back, what's true for me right now, and being okay with what's true for you right now, and being okay if that's different to what was true for you a moment ago and what might be true for you in a next moment. But the stance is really being agile in what that looks like for you, and being okay with being agile in your truth, and accepting that is really what we are, is that always moving motion. And I think, in the context of what we are experiencing with massive states of separation in the world, that is a huge part of what I believe is necessary for us, because we're seeing a lot of division emerging, with people being for something and people being against something, and the complexities and nuances of how that actually looks in a very real landscape, within friendships and close-knit relationships, as well as beyond that. When we're looking at potentially being in service and being in a business where, there's going to be a whole spectrum of people being in different truths. And so what that means for me, and how I believe that we have the opportunity to lead through that, is accepting that it's all true, and accepting that it is all serving us in some way, shape, or form. And it's possibly something that can be incredibly hard to acknowledge, especially when you are standing in your own truth, and perhaps standing before someone who has a completely different truth to you, and being able to really be humble enough and in your own enough to be able to accept whatever truths are that you're facing that may be different to yours. We can lead through that pure devotional acceptance for what is.
Beautiful, thank you. I've been feeling into that, and as like the last 3 weeks we've been in the internship, we've been journeying with the truth, and and last week we journeyed with the shadow, and so it's just this lens in which that we look through. I think it just requires a little bit more openness, a little bit more trust, a little bit more compassion, just even just a little bit more, and this mutual respect. That's what I'm coming back to, because it's like, is this true for me? And I love that you speak to and being agile in the truth. And I think that that's probably a hard concept for a lot of people to understand, is that being that that you and I, and we are completely agile in our truth, and we fully understand that our truth can be different absolutely daily, and so there's that understanding that I think a lot of people can be like, what are these people talking about? Like, it's such a foreign concept. I think so. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate those words. I feel like there's something else under there, but we might even just, anyway, if it comes back, it comes back.
Something that was rising there for me is, as you were speaking, I think there's the when you're exploring that and just receiving all this information internally, externally, there's this opening into curiosity, being able to just sit with all of it and be curious, like, okay, why, what is, and that curiosity kind of gives the many different perspectives, this lens of innocence and this lens of what's possible. And yeah, I think it really opens us to removing from any place of rigidity. I finally nailed that word. And it gives you, I don't know, I feel like when I feel into that, it's like you can just breathe and you can and open to it, allow it all in. And that curiosity is a way of also influencing and informing what's true in that moment. Yeah,
beautiful. Thank you. I want to ask you about socials and content and strategy. I feel like we're just like I'm really feeling like I just want to like kind of put a bomb under all of it, and just like not like because it's all crap and I just want to set fire to it, but for me, I'm finding myself going, oh, where do I feel most alive? Where fills me up as much as I give and as much as I'm want to be of value, but what depletes me, what fills me up, and just analyzing that and feeling like that a lot of like, and again, it's that, if we're just on the surface, and I'm just really thinking out loud when I'm speaking now, is, we're talking about that surface layer before, and, it can be a lot of people feel like everyone's got the same message, everyone's doing the exact same thing. And then then people retreat and they stop putting themselves out there, right? Because it's like, I just sound like everybody else. Wow. Now, I really feel like when we dig a little bit deeper into ourselves, like, I feel like we haven't dug deep enough to explore that who we really are, to find who we really are. And that's really what I'm beginning to understand, because otherwise we do just sound like echoes, right? And it's that same noise. And I know that you speak about, standing out from the noise, right? And, being that scroll stopping, delicious drink of, whatever. And so I'm curious as to just, hear your thoughts on like what's alive in you, like with content and strategy and socials, where it's at, where you think it's going. If people are going, oh my God, like I'm so bored with friggin' socials, what do I do? And because if we use it to be of service, so we feel like it's like, okay, like this is how we market our business, right? So how can we be strategic in that and honoring and feel like that we're doing something that's just unique to us, or, finding our own flavor?
Yeah, cool. All right. So first of all, I want to go straight into, how you framed this, because it's something that activates me a lot. When people say it's just like this, I can't find my voice in this, there's so much happening. And I'm like, that's a lot of bullshit. Like that sounds like a, beautiful excuse to not show up. And I think the only person holding yourself back by believing that is yourself. And even if you don't know your voice, which is kind of where I want to lead into from a more global, universal way that we can look at our social media, I kind of see it through the lens of the shadow of the student. And so you've got it all inside of you. You've got all of this information. You've got your zone of genius. Like it's all there. You've got your target market. But if you're not actually starting to excavate it, if you're not starting to go deep by just getting it out of the tank, then it's going to continue to be noisy. You're going to continue to have all of this feedback filtering back to you that, oh my gosh, I just don't have my voice. Well, start using your voice, start sharing your message, and then that's where you'll be able to get that clarity. And no one can do that for you. And if anything, those who perhaps make you feel like you don't have a voice because their voice is too loud, then let that be your provocation to do what you need to do to rise above the noise. I think, as far as strategy, you don't necessarily have to have the strategy at the start, especially if you're just so up in your head about needing to have it perfect. The more that you just do it and start to play and explore, then you'll have the tangibles to be able to say, okay, so this didn't work, and you can have a look at what you've shared, because it's no longer just sitting dormant, hiding inside of you. You've got tangible material to then look at and review, and you'll see, hey, I was talking to a person here. Who was that? And I seem to have been speaking to them again in this post. Who was that? Like, it's all there, and the only way that can really come through is just by getting over yourself and starting to use your voice. And that over time and refinement and practice and showing up and dealing with the imposter, and dealing with the parts of you that are terrified because you're actually doing the thing. It just begins to compound from there and snowball from there. And then all of a sudden you find yourself looking around like, oh my God, it just landed.
Yeah.
Everything's in place, and it can be a really organic experience that, you'll literally find yourself in this position that you have placed yourself as an expert, or the genius, or whatever it is that whatever language that works for you in your social media. But what I see this, and I guess for me, always being an oversharer, even way back when I was young and just airing out my laundry, like, sharing has never been something that I've hidden away from, but it's through the doing of it and refining how and what and where and when that I've been able to create a bigger impact with it, which is absolutely what I'm all about. And that's always evolving, that's always growing, and that's kind of what I'm excited about having demonstrated through my own willingness to just go for it, just be seen and deal with whatever consequences come afterwards. The consequences have all been really revolutionary, so that's that's what I'm excited about. Yeah. But the strategy, when we start to get really serious about it, and we start to play with that, the strategy then gives us that security, that gives us that structure, that scaffolding. For me, there was a point of difference from when I was just showing up and I was just shining and putting my message out there without necessarily knowing exactly what that is yet. It was following those golden nuggets, trusting that it would, eventually make a bit more sense to me. But where I then began to dissolve in that was by having a system that actually allowed me to honor all of me. And so part of my strategy is to think ahead and plan ahead and have my content mapped out for the month, so that when I go through the phases where I need to retreat, I need to be in my mystic's cave, I need to have that space of solitude, my message is a living, breathing entity that shows up for me. And so I can really come in and restore myself, regenerate, and then continue that cycle going. And for me, that strategy has been just gold. And I want everybody to experience that, knowing that it's not going to be exactly the same for everyone, because we are very dynamic and complex beings. But having that strategy has really, really allowed me to amplify my voice, my message. And I don't know if that answered all of what you shared, but
no, I love it. It was a very big question, and I often have 50 billion questions in one. So I think you did amazing. You speak to this threat, or what I'm kind of receiving in this thread is, we're talking about being agile in the movement, right? Be willing to change, be willing to put yourself out there, be willing to share what's alive in you, and trust that it's all unfolding, right? I can feel myself get emotional underneath there. Just because, like, I feel like there's so many people with this message, right? This dream that's inside of them. And they're so afraid to put themselves out there, and they don't know where to begin because they don't want to get it wrong. They don't want to hurt other people, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And that can hurt. Like, that can hurt, because it's not like, I don't think anyone, very rarely, would intentionally hurt someone else, particularly doing the work that we do, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say to, in this, you spoke to, coming at it from a universal perspective, right? Yeah. So how do we tap into that universal perspective to help us to trust and give us the courage to put ourselves out there, even though we might be hurt and we might feel scorned, or we might feel vulnerable, whatever that looks like. We might be wrong, like whatever.
Yeah, I love that. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is our service is our medicine. And, part of, especially the way that we've been trained as intuitive intelligence trainers, that when we meet a fear, we meet all fear. And so this process of potentially putting ourselves out there in a vulnerable way that our fear may believe is going to cause harm to ourselves or to others. Just by meeting that fear, we are meeting all fear. And that is, that's the biggest way that we could be in service in such a very seemingly, small way. We're not going out to fight battles or whatever it is. We're just saying, hey, fear, I understand that this is really scary right now, but I know that if I am brave and willing to meet that by sharing the thing that scares me the most, that I am having a huge impact on the whole, just by being willing to go there. And sure, there may be people who are harmed in some way, but I don't know. We will never fully know. And if that's an after, if that's a follow-on part that rises to be met, then you know where to go to clear that. And if you don't, then hang around. You'll have loads of tools that we share. But I think it was so divine. Ricky Jane sharing her piece from A Course in Miracles that she shared in a group that we are both in. And it was all about, finding our holiness and being open to how our holiness is going to heal or impact the perceived ramifications that we may hold against the message that we are potentially afraid of sharing because of the harm that might be caused. And that was just, I feel like it's so relevant to this conversation as well. It was medicine for me this morning when I received that. So I'm going to keep that going here. Thank you, Dr. RJ, for allowing us to continue that transfer. But that in itself is a beautiful way, a beautiful representation of what we can do when we are allowing ourselves to be held back in fear of causing harm or in fear of getting it wrong. Having strategies, having a prayer or a mantra to affirm that this actually isn't about the human. This isn't about the little level. This is about the God level. This is about the highest level, and being open to what that ripple effect has without needing to even know what that outcome is. Yeah.
Beautiful. And finding that and tapping into that at a universal perspective, what does that look like?
What comes to mind for me, so do you mean tapping into, that ripple effect beyond our conscious understanding?
Yeah. And that, and just being able to go, okay, like, what is my voice?
Yeah.
What is my voice? Like, what is it? How do I articulate? Like, who am I? What does this voice sound like? So being able to zoom out from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think there's lots of questions that I have that rise because I guess it depends on where you're at in your own evolution, what your that's probably the biggest where I'm wanting to make the best impact in how I respond to that. But assuming that you are on this path and you do have some understanding of consciousness and the nature of our reality, that information is always available. And that what's coming to mind for me is a conversation that I'd had with my psychologist years ago. And I was sharing with her that I felt so conflicted by my ability to kind of shift depending on who I was with at the time. And I found it really confusing, and it was having a big impact on my quality of life because I didn't know who I was. And she said to me, well, you get to decide in any given moment. And that has stuck with me ever since. So, bringing that into this conversation, when you are still not sure and you're still maybe kind of stuck in the human conscious understanding of what your message is, then my invitation would be to you to decide. Who do you want? What is your message today? What is it that is most alive in you today? And follow that tangent and see where it goes, and allow that to come alive in and of itself. It's an analogy that I've used before. We receive a golden drop of cosmic intelligence, and that doesn't go anywhere until we decide to drink it. Or someone else might come and drink it for us, and then we have to wait for the next golden drop. But it's just staying there. It just lingers there. And we won't receive the next drop until we are willing to just take that first drop. And so in the context of this, well, what's my message? How can I, what is it that I have to share? Well, you have a golden drop there in front of you, right in front of you. You just have to ask, what is my message today? Take that in, allow it to come out. And, you might be writing, or you might be moving your body, whatever your language is. It doesn't have to be verbal. It doesn't have to be written. It can be in a piece of art or a dance, or a song, and whatever your creative message outlet is. Through that is where you'll receive the next drop and the next drop and the next drop. What comes to mind with that is a beautiful way that I've forgotten his first name. Murch. He is a he's a well-known film editor, and he talks about the process of editing film. And you've got a whole entire library of materials, bits of pieces of film from here and here and there. When it comes into the editing room, he described it much like a tree. So you've got the compounds, you've got all the bits and pieces that make up this tree, but it's through the doing that a branch begins to grow. And through that growth of this branch, a little node pokes out. And there's a potential direction that this film might end up going. And then as this branch continues to grow, there's all of these little nodes or golden drops that emerge that you may or may not take to create your message, that you may or may not follow, and it's infinite the way that your message can evolve. You just have to take the drop. You just have to allow it to grow, and see where it ends up. You know, the where you started here with this tiny little seedling, it ends up as this beautiful oak tree that once it's there, you're just like, wow, I never could have pictured this. I had to be willing to allow it to grow. And I think following that metaphor is really the way that you get the most foliage, the way that you get the most life from it, is by having a solid practice, is by having a solid framework strategy that keeps you devoted to sharing your message, to keep nourishing the soil, to keep nourishing your own growth. And through that, your message is infinite.
Yeah, absolutely. You speak to it so beautifully. And you mentioned that, like, give it space to, like, unfurl. Give it space for this oak tree and your message to reveal itself. How then, like, do we have this container whereby, like, we allow it to unfold, right? And we allow it to move with it, but without it becoming like this tangent that has 50 billion different threads that never go anywhere.
Yeah. I think having a practice where you can express that daily, whether it's public or just part of your own devotional private practice, is how you can see what lands, how you can see which is the most sustainable pathway, which really aligned with the direction that, the bigger vision that you're ultimate, working towards. Because there is a lot that will be nodes that don't sprout leaves. But I think having that process for yourself, having a creative process where you are able to express that, then let it be, and let's see what happens with that. Part of my processing, especially when I'm going through a state of shadow, part of my processing is absolutely to express that, but I might not necessarily express that publicly then and there, so that I can be in the thick and heavy and yucky messiness of what's needed in that space. And I know that at some point when I'm on the other side of this, there's going to be a part that I've taken away as a lesson that I can use as part of my message to share and to support my message, and my stance. And for me, that's, writing is a big part. Sometimes I'll do a video or just a voice memo, just some way of getting it out of the body, so that there's space to be filled. And for that space of reflection and learning to really swoop in. And I think something every day is really where you are able to have that experience of spaciousness, because what we're doing is we're excavating through that. And
Beautiful, thank you. That's again, it's like, what I get is, like, we're so caught up in the vision, right? And and I think the vision is important, and knowing that, but when it feels too far away, that first next step can be really hard to take, and you don't know which seed to plant. You don't know what the tree's going to look like. Like, it's that evolution is so unknown. So I really love that, you said just start off with following what's alive in you, like follow that golden drop, follow that thing, because that thing reveals the next thing. And it's the breadcrumbs, right? And it's that, and trusting that is really beautiful and really important. And I totally, constantly surrender to, that question of what's alive. What's alive in me, and follow that path of curiosity and let it unfold with whatever it is, and be willing to change, be willing to take a different direction, be willing to double down when you have to double down. I know that that's been a lot of my journey. Like, sometimes I'll be on this journey, and then, when it becomes like on trend, and I see, I feel like people are then popping up, and it's like, I'll just take another direction, right? And it's like, it's the shadow side of the creatrix, because we know that we can just create anything, right? And we have but sometimes it's like, no, sometimes we need to double down. Sometimes it's not a time to, turn around. Sometimes we need to anchor ourselves in who we really are, and just trust those breadcrumbs. So, that speaks to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's huge for me as well, because exactly as you say, you might have heard of it as the shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
And I was just writing about that this morning in my morning pages, where it's it's a very common, especially as a creative, because it's so easy to find inspiration in literally anything and everything. And that newness of creation that happens is like, oh, that's who I am now. Like, I saved one of my kittens a couple of weeks ago, and I messaged Mom, and I'm like, that's it. I'm changing everything, and I'm going to save animals now. I'm a vet. I'm like, I can do this now. This is my thing. But I'm keeping what I learned around that was how to create my message that's still on point with all of the shiny objects. Like, I'm a vet now, and that relates to shining and sharing a message around shining. That focus and creative exploration of how it can all tie back to where I'm going. And what you were talking about before with the big vision, even when we were training together, what feels like so long ago now, it was so easy for me to tap into the big vision, but the steps there were just like, but I'm all the way here. I can walk through that door, be in that vision right now, but the next step felt impossible. Like, that was completely unknown, and having to really step out into the unknown of it. And that really, really resonated as well. Yeah, I think for me, it felt like ages trying to figure out even how to take. I mean, the steps were there, and it was more or less, just continuously leaping off a cliff into the unknown. But the steps eventually became clear and tangible and real, more than just, the beautiful imaginative steps to get to the big vision. They're very, very grounded, very earthy. I can feel them actually beneath my feet now.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's it. Like, and in the beginning, like, there can be like murky, uncomfortable steps, like you're on a dirt track that's, you feel like you can just slip and slide, and you don't really know where the next foot is going to land. But eventually, like, it's that refinement process, like, and I'm very much in that refinement process right now, and it's really beautiful, to go, wow, like the evolution of your service and who you are, and just be willing to be able to go back and be in that space, I feel like, is really, really delicious. What does it mean to you to be, what does it mean to you, and what does it feel like to you to be a fully expressed woman?
Well, what it means for me is being fully like in and okay with my humanness, being fully human, fully divine, and really privileging that, and that feels like a weight off, because I think for a long time where I was really not in love with my humanness, just holding on to this vision or this idea that I had to be fully divine all the time was heavy. Heavy because it's the human. Hey, you are bypassing me. You are not, acknowledging that I am just as divine as you. So really anchoring in that has just been, I didn't free. Like, it's like, even the parts of me that some people won't like, and all of it. It's like being fully okay with that. And for me, that feels like absolute freedom. Like, I don't have to please anyone, actually, and I get to be both lovely and not so lovely, and that's okay too. And I don't have to carry that around. It's just like, love me or hate me, because I'm free.
Because when we zoom out, it's the same thing anyway. Love, hate doesn't even exist, right? So it's like, well, whatever.
And it took me a while to get there. There was a phase of my life, specifically, I think from when I've had my children, my first child, to even just a few months ago, where I really fell into this people-pleasing persona. And I can, my whole childhood, right up until I had my first child, like, I just didn't care what anyone thought. I didn't, there's probably to an extreme where I would just say what was there. I would just, do what was right, felt right in the moment. And I didn't care what people thought of me. And then, there was this huge transition for me coming into being a mum, where all of a sudden it actually mattered what people thought of me, mattered to, be a detriment, because I really lost who I was. And so, this process of being okay with that and finding my own freedom and liberation from just, who cares? What if you being a bitch is actually going to liberate them from their own subconscious fear? Like, just own that. It's really given me the space and freedom to just fully express who I am, when I'm her, wherever I am. And I think we all need a little bit of that freedom for ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. And that too is evolving. I feel like I'm constantly just meeting that part of myself where, okay, like, it's that, that dancing up against the edge, going, okay, like, how much can I just surrender? And when you think that you've surrendered, guess what? You can surrender some more and some more. And like, it is so infinite. So I think that is really important to remember, because I still feel like we hang on to this like idea that we know that there's not a destination and this place to get to. However, they're kind of secretly still waiting for this destination thing to happen when I'm fully expressed, when I feel totally enough, when I'm there, when I'm this person, when I have this, when I say this, when I feel this, whatever. I still feel like we hang on to that a little bit and just being willing to meet that, constantly, I feel like is really important.
Yeah, and I think the way that we can allow ourselves to meet that is by, flipping it on its head a little bit, and by saying that it's not actually when we are in our fully actualized light self that we experience that. It's actually when in our yucky, ugly, dirty human that we need that.
Yeah, absolutely. That feels refreshing.
Which is beautiful. I think the ugliest parts of us are the most beautiful parts of us.
I really do feel that, and that's and that's just dancing with that, being with that, allowing that, and witnessing that in others, and seeing that is really beautiful.
Yeah, I think I had this conversation with my client who, a lot of how her message was all about the positive things, the things that we think people want to see and inspire them. But, really it's the vulnerable parts of us. It's the parts of us that, again, we don't want other people to see, that people are like, oh my God, that just hit me right here. I really felt that. I resonate with that. I'm right there too. And that is how that's where the inspiration comes from, because people relate more with the human than they do with the soul.
Again, like sometimes the soul is too far away. Right, the soul is like the vision. Sometimes it feels like it's too far away, so it's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what? And I think that's because it's just it's so far from that reality.
100%.
So normalizing that, I think feels really beautiful.
I agree.
Kia, I want to ask you, this time has seriously felt like 2 seconds.
We've tapped out of Newtonian time. We are completely non-motion now.
I was like, what? Really? Oh my God. Okay. So I want to ask you, what is turning you on right now?
For me, what's turning me on right now is a project that I'm working on called Essential Video. It's a 5-part series that I'm putting together that's basically giving you a full spectrum understanding of why and how video can really support you in getting the results in your business. And for me, I'm excited about it because it is this amalgamation of human and spirit, of practical results and revenue building strategy with intuition and how that's woven into this process. We're looking at video as a component that is the sum of all parts. We're not isolating video as a way to boost just revenue. We're looking at video as a way to bring your entire business together as one entity, as one whole piece, and how video can really play a part in that. So I've been writing a lot. I've been putting heaps of my content creation into that, and it's really exciting. It's still in that brain dump phase, so there's going to be a few rounds of editing which I'm feeling a little daunted by. But that process of just going, I had the general idea, I had the framework, and the intention of what I'm wanting to do with that, and it's just it's really fun, it's really exciting. And I can't wait to film and put it all together and get it out into the world.
Why is film so important to you?
For me, it was when I was doing the intuitive intelligence teacher training with the Institute for Intuitive Intelligence. And there's a module in there where we explore the link between intuition and imagination. And there was just this huge landing in there where we talk about the multiverse, we talk about the fifth dimension, the fourth dimension, the third dimension, and how these inform, what's stored within the fourth dimension informs the human reality. Anyway, long story short, I could see this correlation with film, and part of a module where we're looking at how the subconscious is informed through symbol, and how our intuition is, the language of our intuition is symbolic. And when we apply this to what we see in film or what we see on video, even scrolling through social media, there's a whole heap of symbol that our subconscious is accepting as new information and data, and that new information and data is then what informs our reality. So while we were doing this module, I had this idea drop in, like, what if we could create a way of neutralizing subconscious fear through film, where we took the passive participation of film, where you might watch a scary movie, for example, and your subconscious is being chased by the man with the chainsaw. What if we could create a way that people then became active participants of the film? So they're watching the scary movie and they're being chased by the man with the chainsaw, and they're like, okay, I'm going to meet this subconscious fear and I'm going to do something about it and make my participation with this film productive. It feels like a little bit crazy. I love that. But it's so exciting. I just think so much film has already informed our reality. And I've got this curiosity that, are filmmakers aware of that? Or are they just, are they receiving this piece, this golden drop of an idea, and they are getting together with a network of people and saying, let's bring this vision to life, let's bridge it from that fifth dimension and bring it into this physical reality where billions of people can experience it collectively. There's so much. I could go on and on for another hour about film. So this for me is the stepping stone to the big vision that's going to, going into this direction of spiritual film direction. For me, bringing that into right now, how I can serve is helping people to have a magnified, glorious, powerful message through video. And that's the very practical, grounded stepping stone that I'm taking at the moment.
No, I love it. Thank you. I agree. I agree that film does play such a vital role in it. And, so I really love, I know you and I know your intention, and I know, the space that you're coming from. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. Something about the filming process that you've touched on, and and I was talking about it with the girls maybe yesterday, saying how the actual filming process is so small in comparison to the entire production, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's the fun part. The filming part is the fun part, but I feel like it's very symbolic, which is why I want to ask you about it. Because that refinement in the editing, and you were talking about before, pulling these pieces together, you got this array of film, and then piecing it together to tell this story. But it's the process that often gets forgotten.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it's you've got to trudge through the mud, a lot of it as well. So you've got this and I'm really again just thinking out loud. So you've got this fun part of the production, right? Or the creation, bringing it to life. And then you've got this polished version that we get to sit down and enjoy. But it's this space in the middle that often gets forgotten, that can be really hard.
Yeah.
What can we do in that space to bring life to it in that, let's say, that editing process? I'm using that as a symbol, so symbolically.
Yeah, that's cool. I think for me, it's the chapter that I was just writing this morning, and it's the sum of all parts. So we're not looking at a tiny piece in isolation, because that tiny piece has the whole in it already, which is a whole another lesson on the science of intuition. But it's the sum of all parts, and they all matter. And what I was writing about this morning in the context of business owners who are looking at scaling, if you're trying to increase your revenue, or you're looking at scaling your business, and you're only concentrating on this isolated part, so long as the sum of all of the parts are not being part of that process, it's just going to keep it contracted, and you're not going to be able to have that full polished immersive experience that you want your client or the audience of your film to have. You want your film, you want the people who experience your service, your message, to be so immersed in it that there's this what is the term, you're taken out of I've completely slipped my mind, where you've taken out of your current reality to be fully immersed into the reality that you are sharing through your message. And so, yeah, what you're looking at doing then is looking from that universal perspective. And part of what I'm teaching in this chapter of the series is that, have a look at where you have isolated different parts of your vision, of your message, of your business, and then look at the parts that are not able to grow because you've pulled everything apart. It's the sum of all parts where we are able to hold ourselves in wholeness, in this beautiful concept of holism, where we have greater efficiency, we have greater impact by the sum of each part of the parts. And I think it's really quite mathematical if you think about it. Like, the sum of all parts is going to multiply the impact that your message or your business has, as opposed to dividing it by isolating, the different parts in the formula, which it's going to, have a deficit.
Absolutely. That is so beautiful. And I agree, like it's, I love the Fibonacci number sequence, because it's a mathematical equation, and I love what you say, that it is the sum of all parts. Like, we need all of it for all creation.
Yeah. And the sum of all parts is ultimately, especially when you look at the Fibonacci formula, it's the way that it's designed, that on the very, very basic level, that equation is designed for optimum sustainability. It's going to keep on growing so that it's able to receive the right amount of water, light, everything, so that it has a sustainable pathway of growth. And this, you can apply that to this as well.
Everything. Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. Like, it's that infinite ecosystem.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Which is really cool. Awesome. Kia, thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for being you. Thank you for all that you do for me, for us, for the world. I love you dearly, sister.
I love you so much too. It's been beautiful, beautiful, beautiful being here. Thank you.
Thank you, beautiful.
Squeezes.
Thank you to everybody watching, and I'll be back next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye.